Right, good afternoon, everyone on the Talented People Facebook page. It's lovely to be here again on a Wednesday lunchtime. I'm wondering how many of you have sandwiches and soup in front of you. I haven't had time to eat mine, so we'll do that afterwards, but there we go. Yeah, welcome to another Talented People live session. It's very, very lovely to see you virtually. Maybe one day we'll be able to do these in the flesh. Who would think about that, a world where that is possible? I'll let a few more of you guys join and find us and just chat about what we are doing here today before we launch into speaking to some of these brilliant guests that we've managed to coordinate diaries magically somehow this afternoon. So for those of you who don't know Talented People, we are an executive search and production staffing company in TV and online content. We work with producers to help them find the best and most creative and diverse talent for their projects, whether short-term, permanent, production management, development, editorial, starting yesterday, start next year, all sorts. You know how it is in this industry. And these sessions we've been running for a year or so now, ever since the pandemic hit. And really, it was our idea to bring people together to talk about interesting subjects, important subjects, making ofs, how to set up an indie, all kinds of things that you can go back and have a look actually at our Talented People website. There's a page called TP Sessions, and there's so many there now as a resource to go and look back at. I hope that they have been helpful in connecting you and informing you and keeping you company over the past 12 months. So do go and have a look. But today we are talking to 5 very influential excuse me, and well-known figures who've blazed the trail for change in working practice this past 12 months and before. But despite the small annoyance of a global pandemic, or perhaps because of, we might come to that, they're going to talk about this year in summary, somehow, what changes have happened, why they were instigated, and where we're really at right now in their opinion. And of course, it goes without saying that there are many more people campaigning for change behind the scenes in TV. We simply couldn't include everybody here, but we're very much looking forward to talking to these guys. So to introduce our guests, I'm going to start with our interpreters. So thank you, Alan Jadavji and Joe Ross, for joining us, who Caroline and I called superhuman. Hello, thanks so much for being here, and we will make sure to speak steadily and clearly. And now, I had to kind of work out who to introduce first, but I'm going alphabetical, which seems fair, of surnames. So Adeel Amini. Adeel is a TV producer, comedy writer, and founder of the TV Mindset. Adeel set up the Coalition for Change, a set of quarterly talks which brings together broadcasters, as well as the union BEC2 and producers body PACT and other organisations to discuss working practices for freelancers. He was also voted Edinburgh TV Festival's Industry Champion 2020 as a result of his tireless work on behalf of freelancers this past year. So hi, Adeel, we're so thrilled that you're here.
Hello, you forgot a celebrity fight starter on Twitter as well. That's the ground that I
yes.
I'm going to talk about it all today, like just within the first few seconds. Screw it, it's all over.
Whatever. But, Adeel, you're welcome. Adeel is very excited to be here, talk as a guest, not running a panel, and able to engage as a human being. So yes, let's hear more about Twitter shortly. And coming next to Abby Kumar. Hello, Abby.
Hey.
Abby is a producer who has worked across development and production at places like Full Fat TV, BB Studios, comedy, and multi-story media. Outside of this, she works with the Coalition for Change, is a freelancer champion for the Creative Industries Federation, and previously co-founded the BAME TV Task Force. She also writes a blog and newsletter that's aimed at demystifying TV for people looking to enter the industry, which I really want to read. Abby, how do we find that?
It's on my Twitter. I only started it like a month ago, but it's got a lot of people subscribing.
Great. We'll look at that. Abby's also a massive fan of Twitter, no holds barred. So if you don't follow her, you should be following her. And Caroline O'Neill. Hi, Caroline. Caroline is a series producer and development executive in factual entertainment, popular factual, and specialist factual, all the factuals, basically. Caroline is a media trust and screen skills mentor and co-vice chair of Beck2 Unscripted, as well as its disability officer. So not really very busy at all. Some of you may also know her as one of the admins of deaf and disabled people in the TV, the Facebook group. So it is needless to say, a champion of creating an even playing field for diverse talent to thrive and succeed in TV, both on and off camera. So we're super glad to have you with us, Kaz.
Lovely to be here, thank you.
And James Taylor with your lovely windows. I have to get a reference. James is a series director and series edit producer, mostly of factual entertainment and entertainment programmes. He's also chair of Beck2's Unscripted TV branch committee and co-administrator of Viva La PD, a grassroots community of over 1,200 TV producers and directors now, right, James?
That's right. Yeah, I think there's almost 1,300 now. But yeah,
amazing.
It's a big and active group. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's really grown, hasn't it? And then last but not least, the very lovely Dean Webster. Dean is a development producer and shooting producer director, specialising in youth skewing, programming and fact-end formats. Dean is a former creative access and packed diversity intern, and somehow now also fits in a role as LGBT and BAME officer for Beck2, alongside the day job of making really cool, fun telly. So nice to have you, Dean.
It's nice to hear that back, actually. I don't think anyone's ever said that out loud to me before, and it sounds really great. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. Sometimes you just, need a little bit of self-reflection. Yeah, that is me. That is what I do. So it is brilliant to have you here. I am just finding it difficult to work out where to start, but I suppose I should add in here a trigger warning that a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this session will be linked to challenging subject matters, including racism, disability, mental health and unemployment during the pandemic, linked with the experience and work that these guys have been doing in their fight for better working practice in the industry. So one excellent place to seek advice from is the Film and TV Charity, which is filmtvcharity.org.uk. They have a support line for confidential help around the clock. And there are loads of other resources on Adeel's the TV Mindset page. So yes, obviously go seek help if any of this is bringing up difficult things for you. So where to start? I mean, chronologically seems the only way. So I'm going to ask you to put yourself in the position of where you were a year ago. So just let's say it was sort of March time, just before the pandemic truly hit. What were you all doing work-wise and in terms of, in relation to the personal campaigning that you're doing, whether you had started anything or whether you were kind of midway through something? How were you a year ago? So Adeel, tell us, was the TV Mindset even a thing then?
It was. I'll tell you what, I was a lot happier a year ago, to probably put it that way. Not just because I didn't know these lot, but we only met in the last year, actually. I think I should probably say we all know each other really well now. I've met, I think, everyone in person apart from Dean. But yeah, a year ago, mentally, I was probably a lot more happy and stable. But yeah, TV Mindset was a thing. I'd already started getting a little bit of traction because we did an article with the Film and TV Charity last January, and I had the lovely quote attributed to me, which sort of kicked off the nature of what I do and how honest I was. But the quote that everyone ran with was, "If all freelancers walked out of this industry, the industry would stop." And then almost 3 months later, we kind of had to walk out, and the industry did stop, not out of choice. So when that went out, people really sort of responded. I got a lot of messages, and I'd been running. I had to change the name to CV Mindset in January, because before then it was the not so catchy freelancer mental wellness mornings, which just really doesn't roll off the tongue and isn't fun in any way, shape or form. But it was a new thing, and they'd been doing it for about a year by that point. So actually, even though a lot of people have sort of been aware of my work in the last 12 months, it's probably been going a lot longer than that. We've been doing a lot of campaigning around mental health and talking about these things, but in a much more closed space, and only like once every 3 months. But then the pandemic hit, and then now we've got over, I think before we went in, I think it was under 1,000 members, and now we're over 4,000. So it's clearly resonating in some way.
Wow.
So
And were you working, Adeel, this time of year?
I was, yeah. I was working on Catchphrase, which I'm back on now. We're in studio next week. And my employers have always been super supportive of all this work, and I can't thank them enough actually for allowing me to do stuff like this, and put on the webinars that we did last year, and just generally being really, really supportive, not just employees but obviously all the other groups and these lovely people here who I'm now going to let talk, because I talk way too much.
I'm going to steal that from you. Okay, so we're parking Adeel a year ago. We know where he was. Dean, how about you? Where were you a year ago, and what were you doing?
Well, so sort of a little bit maybe late to the party when it comes to this like activism in television, because a year ago I was just living my life. I was PDing an Alan Titchmarsh daytime program for ITV, and then obviously the news hit, and it was like, I don't know if you remember, there were the whispers around the office. We were like, they're going to put us into lockdown, and every day someone would come in and they'd be like, 12 o'clock today, we're going into lockdown, heard it on the tube or whatever. And then finally we did go into lockdown, and then everything just slowly crumbled, and it wasn't just that show, like everything, just kind of fell apart, I guess, in television, thankfully temporarily. And then at that point, I think that the television freelancer task force group kind of came up, and I think a lot of people had this pent-up energy and frustration at this industry, which had, isn't perfect by any way, shape or form, and that a lot of people have dedicated a lot of time and effort and energy to, have perhaps maybe in some cases left them out in the cold. And a lot of people just kind of, found their lungs and found their voices and wanted to get together and try and campaign for change. So I wrote a kind of long essay about diversity in television, which is something I've been very passionate about from, the kind of get-go. And then that sort of got lots of comments, and then it seemed to, push me into this world of diversity, and, well, not into it, obviously, because I am it and live it and breathe it, but into kind of, campaigning for better and more inclusive television. And then this is where I am today. I never did go back to that Alan Titchmarsh show, but it did get there.
So a year ago, in a way, it was the pandemic then that for you sort of made everything come together and gave you fire in your belly to be doing what you're doing.
Potentially, I wonder what everybody else thinks as well, because I think there was a real change in mood actually right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I think it was the kind of catalyst where everyone thought, but hold on a second, if we've been working all these hours and unpredictable job roles with not great D&I and not great representation across the fields, but actually when we really need those people at the top, at broadcaster level and at the independent production level, those people seemingly, there's no support there. It didn't seem to come at the very beginning. It was like, it felt like the kind of the contracts that we had between freelancers and our employers had been not broken, but was very much in need of rewriting. And I think a lot of people had the time and the kind of pent-up frustration to try to do it at that moment. So I think for me that that's where I was. You could see it definitely across all the socials and in the kind of anecdotal conversations that you have with different people as well.
Yeah. Caroline, let me come to you. You gave me a funny answer to this when I asked you a little while back, where were you a year ago? Well, tell us what sort of mindset you were in and what were you doing?
I actually think a year ago I became a full-time mum again. I had to take over the childcare completely while my husband was working, and to be honest, I was completely locked out of everything because everything went online and it just wasn't accessible. No captioning, no sign language interpreters, and I recall being very, very frustrated. And I remember having a conversation with Adeel at the time because he actually arranged one of the first accessible sessions. And to be honest, I was extremely fired up because I was very frustrated up until that point. I think a year ago, I was sat crying into a pint of wine, to put it candidly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Caroline there acting like she still doesn't do that now, but you know, we all know.
And Abby, then coming to you, what were you up to a year ago?
Well, actually, I was thinking about this, and me and Dean bumped into each other just before the pandemic, and everyone was like saying hello with their feet rather than shaking hands. A packed indie diversity thing at Channel 4. And they asked me to do like a 2 minutes on, because we both did the same scheme. So they asked me to do 2 minutes on like diversity and how the schemes helped me. And I got on my soapbox because I have long-term been a person who bitches to my boss about diversity on and off screen. And so I got on my soapbox and said some things about diversity and development to all these talent managers, and it was just so quiet. Like, and then there was a solo clap that came out of Dean in the corner. So yeah, that's where I was. I was ready to do something rebellious.
Yeah, you were a coiled spring.
I was raring for the moment and opportunity to bitch on a bigger scale.
Okay, and we'll come to how that manifested itself in a minute.
I remember that as well. It was like a Trojan horse had snuck into like this entertainment space in Channel 4. And we were all drinking wine and having canapes, and Abby gets up and you're like, oh. I loved it. Brilliant.
Someone just dropped a bomb.
Love that. Truth bomb. James, Viva la PD then a year ago, was it in existence, and where were you at?
Yeah. So Viva la PD's been going for about 4 or so years now. But yeah, well, personally, I had a job lined up. Bizarrely, Dean, it was also with Alan Titchmarsh. But basically, it's as things sort of kept getting pushed back, that sort of job went away. So I found myself in a situation where, like a lot of freelancers out there, all of a sudden had no work, had no income, had no end in sight of that. Because if you remember at the beginning of the pandemic, when it first hit, no one knew how it was going to affect us, and no one knew how it was going to affect our industry. And there was a lot of uncertainty, and it was a really difficult time for a lot of people. But quite quickly, and actually I was impressed looking back, because I got an email with the survey software that we used, because we did a survey to find out about how the pandemic was affecting freelancers. And I got an email a couple of weeks ago that said it's a year since the survey. And actually, I was amazed at how quickly we managed to get that survey out. It was only a week or so after the first lockdown happened, because we knew and identified straight away that people in our industry would be affected by that. And I suppose for me, that was the start of becoming more active in this campaigning space in terms of sort of working hopefully on behalf of freelancers and sort of helping them out. And I suppose the reason I wanted to do it, I wanted to highlight first and foremost to the government that a lot of people in our industry were excluded because their schemes just weren't applicable because of the way that we work in this industry, which is sort of unique. So that was difficult, and I wanted to highlight that. But I also wanted to highlight to the broadcasters, look, you've got, you know, your entire workforce is sitting at home, really uncertain about the future, and what are you doing about it? And I still to this day feel like I'm disappointed looking back that the broadcasters didn't step up and do a bit more. And thankfully things are sort of gearing up again now. But what that did give everyone an opportunity to do, and everyone here on this call today, we all sort of came together. And I suppose we called it at the time our Avengers Assemble moment. because, you know, we were from these different disparate groups who were operating sort of in the campaigning space, but it gave us a reason to come together and actually hopefully speak with one voice and get our message across. And so since then, we've everyone here I know is part of the TV task force. I mean, that group itself has sort of evolved as the year has gone on. But we're all still sort of part of the different things. But I think what the pandemic did, it gave everyone a chance to step back and look at the way that we're sort of employed. And actually, Dean, I slightly disagree with you. You said that that sort of the way we are hired isn't broken quite. I disagree. I think the freelancer model is broken, and I think that something needs to change. And I'm so glad that we're having these conversations now. And I don't think anyone expects this change to happen overnight. It's probably going to take time, and I think we have to be ready for it to take time. But at least we're having these conversations now, and the Coalition for Change, which Adeel has been working so hard on, is hopefully going to help with that.
I'm going to just put it out there because, look, this is an open forum and I don't really get to talk as frankly as this because I have to always be super professional. I think it's just simpler than that. I think we all just realise that we are treated like absolute shit. Like, I'm sorry, that's the long and short of it, that we as freelancers are the bottom of the food chain. We never get anything. And when we were all forced to stop and the government was shafting us, we basically realized that, hang on, we put so much into this. We are making money for these broadcasters. Without us, you don't have these shows. We're the largest bloody stakeholder in this industry, and yet we're treated like absolute shit, get peanuts. And all of this stuff that we should be protected by, we don't have. So I was just like, screw this. I mean, it's too late for me now. I'm old and haggard. But for the next lot, you know, we've got to do better if we want this industry to survive, because we all love being here. We're only working for it, you know, and doing all this campaigning as much as it breaks us. We're doing it because we love being here, and you know, we don't want to leave it. We shouldn't feel like we have to leave it. We just want to have a bit more protection and a bit more dignity at work. I think that's me. I'm on one today, guys. I'm sorry.
Boom. No, the honesty is appreciated, and like you say, you can. And look, you've all worked incredibly hard over the last year, along with all the other sort of unsung heroes in the background. But it's been exhausting, right? I mean, campaigning and trying to hold down or find work or hold down the work that you're doing and keep the momentum up is really tough work. And I think in TV, we are problem solvers, aren't we? So, you know, if a problem comes up on a shoot or in the research of something, or, you know, we fix it. Like that's what we're designed to do. And now with all of these problems that, you know, have been a long time coming in telly, and then suddenly a moment of reflection and time, perhaps, as you've all referenced, meant that you could see them and you wanted to fix them. It must feel very frustrating, though, not having that finite end of, oh, okay, I have fixed the problem now. Now I can move on, like you can in a TV program. Oh, we've made it now. It's gone out. We can move on. Emotionally, Caroline, can I come to you here? Emotionally, and how are you doing with all of your campaigning with deaf and disabled people in TV? Where are you at?
With deaf and disabled people in TV, we actually have over 700 members across the industry, from entry level all the way up to senior level. We're talking commissioners, execs, series producers across the board. And a lot of the passion for what we do comes from the fact that deaf and disabled people are so underrepresented in the industry. I think last summer was a massive wake-up call for me, because I realized that we had a perfect situation where deaf and disabled people could actually work from home. They could actually have flexi working, but it didn't happen. And I think for us, the group's already been around for a few years, but there was a lot of grumbling, there was a lot of frustrations and anger about not being visible and no one listening to them. And so when I took over, along with Charlie, Bryony and Shari, our ultimate aim was to change the feelings within the group, and it started to happen, and people are now becoming aware of us and we're on people's radars, and that influenced the group there's more optimism now, and people are now starting to actively engage and network and apply for jobs. And people are actually saying, hey, we're looking for you. And they're willing to be introduced and willing to offer training and development, vice versa. So I do feel like something is changing and the shift is coming. And that's what keeps me going ultimately.
Yeah. It feels like we've certainly noticed a tangible change in the employers that our clients that we work with, the people who are looking for freelancers. And we will always try and, like you've said, Caroline, you and the other admins have made it much more accessible. So things feel like they are moving forward in that sense. Adeel, what would you like to say?
I hope Caroline doesn't mind me saying this, but I think she's dodged your question, and I'm going to answer it on behalf of her and all of us, because emotionally, this is the hardest thing I have ever done. I cannot even tell you how difficult this is. I think people see what we do publicly, and we do these panels, but the day to day is so draining and so difficult, and you've always got, for all of us, it's different, but got people in our inboxes sharing really harrowing stories, and you've got to look at that, and we've got people that we're sort of trying to make change with who are being really resistant. I've through Twitter, I mean, the amount of abuse I get. Yesterday I did a post about Ramadan, and one of the comments was, point 14, look out for bombs because you're Muslims. And I'm just like, this is my life now. I did a post that was sort of pro transgender people, and I had very transphobic people saying they're going to come to Bradford and rip my head off. And Caroline, everyone has seen it, I think, personally, but certainly Caroline has actually talked me off a ledge a couple of times over the last year. And I have to say that the emotional impact of what we're doing, nothing has prepared us for this. We didn't get into this industry to be campaigners, and everyone knows I cannot wait to give it up. It's just the worst, most draining thing. But we've got a responsibility now, and that's such a double-edged sword. But yeah, I'm going to speak for emotionally. We put on a brave front, but it's one of the reasons I wanted to come on here is to say, actually, it's fucking hard. Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing. I'm fasting. It's Ramadan, but it's bloody hard. It's so hard. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And honestly, it's just, I think I wouldn't be here, I think, without people in this room as well. They've been such a, they've never seen me say this openly. Abby, I can see sort of throwing up inside, but I've needed them. I don't think I would have survived the year without them. I got through some really dark times and relapsed and through all of this. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that I met these guys.
Yeah, I'm not grateful I met Adeel at all.
Keeping it real, Abby. Well, thank you, Adeel, for your honesty. People need to hear that. You're right. They don't see behind the scenes, and they only see this stuff. And also the positive changes that you guys are pushing for and you are making, and the headlines in our industry magazine, but they don't see the workings and the crap that you have to put up with behind the scenes too. Caroline?
I think also it's very important to realise that all of us are doing it all on a voluntary basis. I know that Adeel works all the hours to silly o'clock, and many of us do that, and we're holding our full-time jobs and all this other stuff that comes up. I'm not going to swear because Mum's probably watching, but it's draining, and absolutely draining. And sometimes it gets to Sunday and I think, oh God, what is this week going to bring? And having to mentally prepare yourself what might kick off or what's impending. There's always something.
Abby, you mentioned that you were like a coiled spring a year ago, like ready to fight for change in terms of diverse representation off camera. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, we've seen improvement on screen, like no one can deny that. The quality may be lacking in like quantity over quality rather than quality, is what I think a lot of people would argue. But behind screen, I don't think that we've seen anywhere near the same amount of change. And especially when you get to mid-level, I think not just for diverse people, but it's always way more kind of pronounced within diverse groups. But at mid-level, loads of people leave the industry. And I think that no one really recognized, it didn't feel like people were recognizing that. And the more you spoke to people, everyone just wanted change. And it was a time where, you know, the excluded freelancers were doing all their work, and the television and freelancer task force also sprung up. And I think everyone just felt a bit emboldened because, you know, it was a time at which everyone felt like they had nothing to lose. And if we were going to have an industry reset, which we do need, and I would argue that it hasn't happened yet, that felt like the perfect time to push. How much we pushed, maybe we needed to push more, maybe we still need to do a lot more pushing, but I think that there are a lot more people on side now as well, because the pandemic has affected absolutely everybody. So yeah, I think that's why I was a coil ready to go. But I think historically I'm just a coil ready to go. I'm always looking for a man to strike down. Ever since I was at school, all my teachers would complain about me. I think, yeah, I'm just that person.
That is true.
But do you, I mean, that is kind of worrying that you feel that the reset hasn't happened, it still needs to happen. Do you feel like any progress has been made from the work that you have done?
I think people are aware of it for sure. Like, so the BAME TV Task Force, who have now been rebranded to Be Inclusive, sent out a letter last year that I'm sure everyone knows about. It was signed by 1,500 people. It had 5 things that it was looking for to change in the industry. And I think a lot of work had been done to that point by people who have been campaigning for this stuff for years. And internally, I think that the pressure's always like that. Internally, there are people who have been fighting for this stuff as well. Like, you can't deny that there are groups of people who have been working very hard on this, D&I people. But, you know, it's everybody kind of working together. You need the outside pressure. You need it to be the priority on these, on a big corporation who, unless it's going to affect their bottom line, then probably not going to do anything about it because it's not in their interests. So I think like the last year has actually shown that it can be good for your bottom line, hopefully. I think, maybe, I don't know, actually, I'm not in those companies, I don't know. But I think we're kind of hoping, but yeah, I think there's a lot of goodwill. But I think there's been goodwill 10 years ago. I know there's been goodwill 20 years ago. 20 years ago, they had a thing that was similar to the Coalition for Change that I saw a Guardian article about, that really led to not much. So
it's definitely felt from where we're sitting anyway that it's a conversation where things have happened over the years before, where there have been nods to things. There's been a quota for something. We must do better for. This has felt louder and more long. Like I sense a longevity. Perhaps, like you're saying, I hear you. Like, it's not happened enough yet. Maybe that hasn't happened. But does it feel like at least there are people still engaging? The traction is better than before.
We won't see the results of a lot of the things that the channels have put in for a couple of years, so we can't like really judge yet. I think we could only judge probably in like 3 or 4 years' time how far we've come from this point. But I think everyone here would say the momentum that you felt last summer is not felt right now, and I think that is slightly worrying. You feel like there's a bit more blowback, and I think there are people who are well-intentioned who are carrying on and have had their mindset changed as a result of what happened last year. But I think there's also a lot of people who have completely forgotten it and have gone back to business as usual as production start picking up. It's a lower priority.
I think you're right. I think the frustrating thing is that right at the very beginning, and then I talk particularly kind of, through the lens of like diversity and inclusion, is that everyone was like, right, we need to make a change. And it's the same thing that people have been saying for years and years. And, just like that article you read, Abby, at the Edinburgh Festival last year, they were having, a talk around diversity with the same title as the talk they had 20 years ago. So But it's annoying. We see all these positive statements of intent from broadcasters and from production companies, but I think we've all sort of been burnt enough times to know that actually a lot of them don't really go anywhere. And also, secondly, I think when you look at it, like, you know, companies that come out saying we're going to put X amount of people on this scheme, or we're going to get 20% of people from diverse backgrounds and, you know, roles in television and whatever, different seniorities too. It's so short-sighted to think that the only issue and the only way to solve the issue is by kind of plucking arbitrary numbers or representative numbers of the national you know, population, and then saying now we have to find them. It's like, you know, if you don't look into the actual reasons and the kind of modes of inequality which have stopped people from getting into those roles, whether it be BAME or whatever, you know, people of colour, people with disabilities, you know, women in the later years of life, you know, if you don't look into the reasons behind that and start to tackle that, then it doesn't feel like we're going to make any meaningful change to get where we need to be. And at the moment, it still feels like we're at the infancy of this conversation and the journey, where people are going, well, the only way to solve it, and we've come up with it, it's called 20%. Find your 20%, tick the box, and it's done. And unless we get past the tick the box stage, then nothing really will change.
Yeah, it's the interrogation. That's what's missing, is the interrogation for the reasons that this is the case.
And also, don't get me wrong, it's like, maybe, you know, in a year's time, once the 20% of the BBC's been in, and, you know, they've got an idea of what shows haven't hit the target, you know, maybe the next stage actually is a kind of public discussion about why we can't get 20%, you know, people from working class backgrounds or X, Y, Z. And it's right, you're right, it's too early to kind of, you know, judge how these things have come out. But I think if you look back historically, we've been having these conversations for a very long time. They didn't just start at the beginning of the pandemic. So, you know.
Yeah, and these targets have been missed time and time again, right?
Once, you know.
But I think on a wider level as well, and, you know, I've seen a couple of people reference the coalition as well, and we've talked about it. I think that was one of the main things, is that I wanted to get freelancers in the room, because historically we're locked out of those conversations. And I think for me, the difference this time is that we're there and we're holding people accountable. And the good thing about pretty much everyone in this room, probably you as well, Kimberly, is that we are stubborn as fuck. And we're probably not going to let it go. Like, I've seen a comment already saying, you know, we're being, you know, just sort of fed nice, and that's probably true. But, you know, we are in the rooms at the moment, but I think people really underestimate how much we are willing to see, you know, things change, and, you know, how passionate we are about it. So even if the coalition doesn't work, you know, I've never said, oh, it's going to be the answer to everything. You know, it's just something we're going to try, and everyone's there. And if it works, great. But there's always going to be another plan, and we'll regroup and we'll keep going, because we have to. And as Dean said, it's not just about, you know, the cosmetic thing, because this industry, look, you know, straight talking, it loves to congratulate itself. And it really loves to sort of do this sort of performative thing. David Olusoga's speech, Edinburgh, it was all everyone could talk about for a grand total of about 12 hours. Next week, no one was talking about it. No one's done anything. No one said anything. My job is to bloody live that, you know, and carry on those conversations and make sure people don't forget them. And that's bloody hard as well. But everyone in this room, you know, that's the sort of nature. And I think the reason we all click and we all get on and we're all doing this is because we are that passionate. And I don't think it's in our nature to stay quiet, as you can see today. But I just, you know, I think if there's something that, you know, people who are listening, you know, if we can reassure them, it is to say that I just don't think this fight is, you know, it's not going to be solved anytime soon, but we're not going to give up anytime soon either.
Just look after yourself as well, though, guys. Yeah. Like that is...
Yeah, I mean, if a broadcaster could pay for my therapy, that would be great.
Great. Yeah. No, it is fascinating, because we have conversations on a daily basis pretty much with our clients about, you know, trying to encourage them to see something in a CV that, you know, they can't see from a 2-second scan. And that's what we find our work is, to find out what that is for that person. They don't have the perfect CV, whatever that is, but we're being asked to, and we want to, present people from diverse backgrounds, unusual CVs, different industry. So we're being told to do that, and yet they go, oh no, but they haven't done X. So we often suggest things like shadowing, or could they perhaps they're a bit too junior, but otherwise they're brilliant. So is there someone else you could team them up with, etc. So it's almost like we are trying to help do that as a private company, an agency, with our own ideas and our own drive to do that. And actually, should that not be broadcasters and other companies who are actually doing that. You know, we've done that off our own backs, if you like. James, did you have something to say on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that's a general problem for the whole industry. I think there's a bit of a lack of imagination in some ways, that people can't really see that you're capable of doing something unless you've done something almost exactly the same before, which means that you end up with the same people making the same programs, and that's why a lot of programs, I think, feel the same. And yet there's a big pool of talent out there, and you know, I personally have sort of tried to move about in terms of genre and the type of programs that I work on, kind of things that I like to do. And what I generally find is that working within the different genres, it's sort of, you can bring a new perspective, you can bring something else that you perhaps wouldn't have if you'd only worked on one type of show. So I think, yeah, there's a general thing that the industry needs to work on, and sort of take more risks and give people a chance, because people end up in jobs that perhaps they don't necessarily want to do, or that they sort of get slightly resentful because they end up doing the same thing over and over again, and they want to move on. Yeah, I want to see more of that, and I think to come back to what you were just saying about sort of trying to encourage other people to work on in different jobs and things like that. I think as an industry, we're sort of we have a unique responsibility to sort of make sure that we do represent the whole country, the whole population, because we have to reflect it back to the country, and we have to bring all those voices and all those perspectives. And if you don't have that, then what are we doing? We're doing something wrong if we're not doing that. And I think that's why we need to sort of push that and move things on.
Completely agree, James, as lots of people do, including Jess Watts and Mark Challender. Thank you. By the way, guys, you can comment or ask questions to the panelists in the Facebook comments under the video. They have said they're happy to take any questions, pretty much. So fair game.
Did I say that?
Well, a couple of you did. I won't say who. Maybe it was you, James. Maybe it wasn't.
Can I add to what James is saying? I think, a lot of what you say is bang on. And I think the reason there's a lack of imagination, again, I'm just going to go through it. It's people in power scared of losing what is comfortable and secure for them. That is not just in this industry, but it's just anywhere in society. You look at the government, you look at everything. I know I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit, but that is what we're here to shake up. It's just redressing that power balance. Because you'll do the easy thing, you'll do the most convenient thing. It's easier for a supermarket to install self-checkouts and get things through that way than actually spend time on nurturing and thinking about the jobs that are being lost as a result of it. And then go back to Abby's point about the business case. One of the things I've learned through this whole process is that actually empathy is key, but at the end of the day, dealing with bloody corporations here, like I feel like there's a joke that we sort of being Erin Brockovich, but ultimately when the whole Piers Morgan thing happened, I realized that's what it bloody is. Because and this is something I'm going to say to the broadcast. We've got a coalition meeting tomorrow, and I'm going to be really open about it. It's about finding the business case against bullying and stuff. And with he who shall not be named, who I will happily go on record and say, because I've not talked about it publicly before, but he's a prick. That's pretty much my opinion on it. But he, if people had stopped him and controlled him at the right time, when Piers Morgan left Good Morning Britain, it wiped £250 million off ITV's share price. And that was because someone with power ran off and then went and said something that they couldn't come back from because they were allowed to do it. But if you have maintained and controlled somebody, or, given them the right sanctions and organized, sort of monitored that behavior, you probably wouldn't have lost that 250 million. Is my opinion, and is something that I'm putting forward. So I think that's my view on it as well in terms of the business case, but we've just got to find a lot more of that.
I was going to jump in, Adeel, and just say from a business perspective as well, I think something that is quite shocking, if you really think about it, is that a lot of us work for production companies and indies that are quite small and perhaps don't have their own HR department, and that's totally understandable, because it's going to be difficult financially to do that. But when you think about it, it means that there isn't a sort of dedicated department for humans. There's no one sort of looking out for us, and sort of there's no one to go to. And I think that we need to sort of somehow factor something in somewhere to sort of make sure that we as people, and it's the sort of what you were saying before about making sure people are looked after. And actually, I think you're right that if you have a happier and a happier workforce, basically you're going to get more out of them, and hopefully they would give you sort of a lot more back. And you can't quantify that. You can't put that on a spreadsheet. You can't say, well, this person was happier, so they sort of like were happy to put in the hours a little bit when I needed them to. But yeah, you can't put that on a spreadsheet, so it's really difficult to quantify. And I think that that's something that someone needs to accept, and say, right, okay, we know this costs a little bit more money, but actually it saves us money in the long run because we know that everyone's being looked after.
I think, just to jump in on the back of both your points, actually, and what kind of spurred me when the offer came to kind of join back to Unscripted branch committee, was the sense that, and I think it sort of feels like it's maybe at the root of a lot of issues, is that as freelancers and as creatives, we join the industry with, you know, the best intentions of making great TV shows and hopefully getting BAFTAs, touch wood, and Oscars, you know, touch lots of wood, you know. But actually, at the end of the day, we're working for production companies and for broadcasters who are at their core businesses. And I think a lot of when people call me up and kind of talk about the ways they've been kind of aggrieved at work and stuff, I think a lot of the roots of that is they think, you know, we're in this nice kind of creative environment, but actually we're in a kind of corporate environment which looks after itself first and foremost. And actually that's why for me I wanted to be a part of the Better Union, because actually if you start to apply the same kind of approach and same kind of logic to in terms of how to get better conditions at work when you're working for a business, as you do in any other field, you know, there are really strong unions in education and other sectors in the United Kingdom which, you know, really strong advocates for the people that work within them. And I think that, you know, we need something similar and the same, which is why hopefully, and I think James and Caroline will agree, you know, this is the aim of the Unscripted branch of the union and what we've all kind of come together to try and do.
Totally. Well, thank you for the little plug there, Dean, in terms of the branch. But just in case people don't know, basically Beck2 realised after we had a few conversations with them, and I've been open about this with them, and they sort of accept this. And Philippa Childs, who's the head of the union, has accepted this. And basically, for people who work in the types of programmes that we do, which we've lumped together with the word unscripted, which isn't the sexiest word, but it does the job. So basically, Beck2 realised that they didn't have enough sort of membership, I suppose, in people who make unscripted programmes, and we're facing a lot of issues. And so thankfully that they put together the new Unscripted branch. And so we've all been working since about last September time on, we've been working on a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and we're hoping to be able to sort of talk more about what we're doing sort of later in the year. But I think to have Beck2 sort of on board now with people who do the kinds of programs that we make, hopefully it will sort of have a positive impact on everyone. And I think that sort of is a first step, but there's still a long way to go for sure.
I think, but just to jump on the back of that, I think that's been my biggest sort of source of resentment actually over the last year, is that if you look around this room, none of us are being paid to do this, and yet we have so many industry institutions. And my bugbear has always been, you know, we're here because I feel like all of those institutions have failed us. We wouldn't have had to stand up if everyone was doing their job. And I've said this many times, it's not going to be news to anyone, but it just, you know, I don't think any of us want to be here doing this, but we've had to because we felt let down by people who, you know, or organizations that are there to serve us. And I really hope that that can change, or at least we can help make that change.
It also feels a bit like the industry has changed so much in like 20 years, the way that it's structured, that a lot of these institutions haven't modernized with the way that these things have changed. I just want to go back to when you were talking about people being like transferable skills, basically. I just think there's a lack of transparency in this industry, and that is where the root cause of 90% of its problems, or probably more than that, that if you don't make it clear what you need, like you can't, this industry, you don't need qualifications to get into it. You don't need to have an excellent education to be a great producer. And I think the fact that we put so many barriers up to people being able to access us in any way. And like even finding jobs, like there's so many barriers to the way that you as a new entrant can find a job and what the roles are within television. Like I just think that's where a lot of the problems start right at the beginning. The problems of recruitment and the way that they introduce people to our industry start right at the beginning, and it's because I just think we're not transparent enough.
Caroline, I'm going to come to you in a sec, but on the point of Abby that made, I just popped into my head actually that someone we work with from an outside organisation recently came to me and said, oh, have you got a job spec that you could share for this job and that job and the other job? And I stopped in my tracks and kind of laughed out loud, and Dean's giggling too, because exactly that. Where are the job specs actually? You know, we often just say, come in for a chat, you know, here's a little bit about the program. Well, what job do you expect me to do on your production? You know, what qualities do I need to possess to do that? That would be more helpful.
The other thing is, as a result of that, is like you don't know when you're ready to make that step up. So you don't know if you could argue for that promotion because you don't really know, you can't argue your case against every like little bit that person is doing. And so again, it just means that people who probably could argue for a promotion are like left in mid-level because they are like, oh, well, my boss doesn't see me being capable of that, so I can't take that step up.
It's very subjective in that sense. Yes.
I only laugh because if there was a job spec, then a lot of us probably wouldn't do it, to be honest. Let's spend 50% of your time talking to Edpol, you'd be like, nah, forget that.
Ideal, I say that job spec. What next, Kimberly? You know, contracts before we actually start work.
Well, that's a lot to ask, isn't it?
Adeel, stop dreaming.
Caroline, what did you want to say?
Well, one of the things we do as part of Deaf and Disabled People in TV is job specs, because we realise a lot of people were locked out because of that reason. And, you know, a lot of people just do a quick copy and paste. This is the job, off you go. And sometimes driving isn't necessary. And many of our members don't drive because of various reasons. And they shouldn't be locked out because of those jobs. And a lot of it comes back to laziness in creating and building those job ads. We need to have a lot more flexibility there. But also we've started asking companies when they approach us, well, how is your accessibility built in? And we're told, I mean, I shouldn't quote really, but I was told off the record that 80% of production company buildings are actually not accessible. That's not good enough. You're immediately locking out loads of people on and off screen from even accessing the industry because they can't even get past main reception when they enter the building. How does that look on your company? But also we're talking about senior representation here as well. And I think there's a massive problem there because I only know 2 disabled commissioners in the UK. That is it. If you do not have enough senior representation in the industry, how do you expect to make change? How do you expect to make influential change down the chain? Diamond data statistics have shown that it's a problem on senior level. We don't have enough people there making those decisions, those influential decisions, and we need to make those changes there if we want to make influential change in the industry.
Very well said. Caroline, have you noticed though a tangible change in flexible working for disabled people because of the pandemic specifically and working from home?
I think at the moment, yes. I mean, obviously, because we can't go to the office and we're all literally working in our bedrooms or so, you know, which isn't ideal. But I wonder whether it will be a sustainable change. That's my question. I think most of the companies I'm hearing from are really keen to get back to the office. And that concerns me a little bit because a lot of freelancers actually want that flexibility, that quality of life. And it's not just disabled people. It's everybody. We just want a nice work-life balance that we can actually maintain. And we've proved that we can do it.
It feels like one of the most positive things to come out of the crappy situation of the pandemic, doesn't it? That we've all proven, again, going back to being problem solvers, we've proven we can edit remotely, we can set up shoots remotely, we can direct in different countries, we can write catchphrases remotely. You know, it's possible, and we can do anything. James.
I totally agree with that, Kimberly. I think you're right. It's sort of demonstrated a flexibility that we all have that maybe should now be inbuilt into as many productions as possible. But what I will say is that I really noticed that, that when you're not in the room with people, when you're not all there together, I think there are moments, key moments along a production where you really do need that, and you do need people to be in an office together. So I think hopefully going forward, we can have the best of both. But one other thing that I wanted to say, I was trying to work out recently, why are we in the situation where I know Adeel said, you know, we don't really want to be doing what we're doing in terms of the campaigning. We shouldn't have to be doing it. And I was trying to work out why we are where we are. And I think one of the things, like Abby mentioned, sort of this has been happening slowly for the last 20 years or so. And I think if you think about it, one of the things that has happened over the last 20 years is that if you remember the BBC indie quota, and I think it was probably similar at ITV, used to be 25%, which meant that up to 75% of other programmes were made in-house at either of the broadcasters. So because of that, they had a lot more staff, and they had a lot more people that they had to sort of look after and nurture in terms of their careers. And since then, those quotas have reduced. So I can't remember what the current percentage is, but I think it's less than 50%, I think, for BBC. And anyway, my point is that the industry as a whole has done everything it can to get as many people off their books in terms of staff numbers as possible. And it means that there isn't anyone sort of looking out for the people like us who are making the programmes and doing those jobs. Someone made a good point in one of the surveys that we did, that essentially you might do 5 jobs in a year for BBC One, but for 5 different production companies. So surely if you're the BBC, you want to sort of take an interest in that person's career, or the thousands of other people who are making programs for you, because essentially you want to invest in that. You want to invest in that talent, because ultimately it's going to pay you back in the long run. And I think that's probably where we are. And we don't really talk about that, and we haven't really talked about why we're in the situation that we're in. But I thought that was worth pointing out.
Yeah, thanks, James. I'm going to have a look at some of the comments now. We've probably got about 15 minutes left on the panel, guys, so feel free to ask us anything, and I'll try and get to as many as I can. Leslie Lee, hi Leslie. She says it's down to the broadcasters to insist on change, and production companies to encourage their talent managers to think outside the box. She also adds, actually, later, that is really interesting from our point of view, that production companies need to consider CVs pushed forward by their talent managers, or, you know, talent people like us, because she's been contacted many times by talent managers who want to push her forward, but then here's nothing. So I think that is something that I think everybody would agree needs to happen, is, you know, we need to be listened to. There's a reason that we do the job that we do. We spend the time getting to know the people that we're putting forward for roles. So that's very interesting. Who would agree with the broadcasters need to be doing more? Let's do a straw poll.
I'm going to just throw a little bit of spanner in there, though, because the situation that we're in now, and everyone who's at the table, I think apart from Dean, has seen this at a coalition meeting, is that broadcasters say it's the indies that need to do it, and the indies say the broadcasters need to give us more time. And here we are stuck in the middle with this bunch of, no, I'm not going to say I've sworn too much anyway, but it's that's the situation we're in. And it's like, what we're trying to do with the coalition is say, okay, we get that, but how can we all just shift our behavior a little bit to sort of, we're not going to get anywhere by doing that, and then nothing changes and everybody just carries on the way they are. So yeah, there is, I do think that broadcasters have a responsibility as well, but now being in it, obviously, having done this for a year, it is so much messier.
Yeah, I would agree, but I do think the broadcasters, ultimately, indies want to win their business, and so if they insist upon something, like, businesses will adapt to be able, like, we see it all the time internally of like, budgets are cut, but we're going to make it work because we need the business. But I think broadcasters also need to be emboldened by freelancers because they're scared. There's no two ways about it. They're just scared. And like, I think also with the times where, they've got so, like, the less and less viewers are like reducing, etc., etc. I think They just need to be pushed by people like these people.
And also, I would say I'm really sick of anyone saying stuff like, oh, it's all COVID related or this, that, and the other, because these problems all they've existed way beyond that, before this. So I don't buy that as an excuse from indies or broadcasters, because these problems have always been around.
Coming to Vicky Carter, thank you for your comment, Vicky. She says, I think there's a huge business case for treating people well. People who aren't tired, stressed, under constant pressure will work more effectively. I think that is a very good point that we all agree with there. And let's come to Laura. Laura Thompson says, I think Abby and Dean have hit the nail on the head. Indies and broadcasters are businesses first, but they are operating in a largely unregulated field, and transparency is rubbish. It doesn't happen this way in other industries which work with the same budgets that we do. There's no accountability for bad behaviour, and it's often the freelancer who suffers. Coupled with a lack of training in people management, experiences can vary wildly from one company to the next. We need proper training as we progress through roles so that fair and proper working practices are monitored at every level. Great comment.
I agree that we are right, yes. I mean, I think it's like the training thing is really important. Like James, you mentioned when people were in-house and they used to be, you know, people talk about the BBC Academy and the training that they got from the BBC Academy, like back in the day. But now if you want any form of training, you know, you have to pay for it, or it has to be paid for by somebody. But with freelancers being such a commodity, there is no incentive for production companies to pay for that most of the time. So unless you have the money to pay for the training, which in itself is another barrier to progression, then you don't get to move up, or you don't get the skills that you need to do the job. And I think, you know, there's one argument which goes, you know, if you get a builder around, you don't pay for your builders to do, you know, the training that they need to do building or whatever. But I don't think our work in this field is similar in nature to that kind of freelance work there. But it's two completely different kettles of fish there. And it's beneficial to everybody, which is the most bizarre thing to me, because it's not like the freelancers just needed to get more money and move up the chain. It's like, as a creative sector, you know, everybody gains when the whole industry upskills.
Yes, seems a no-brainer, doesn't it? Caroline.
Yeah, and also I think, you know, most training isn't accessible anyway. The buildings aren't accessible, the courses are not accessible. There's no subtitles, no audio description, there's no interpretation. And when you ask, it's so hard to get that access. So for disabled people trying to progress, it becomes impossible. So access costs, you know, and things are just the beginning of it as well. It should be built in from the start.
Mm-hmm. And actually, on that note of training, Alan Riches, thanks for your comment. What are your thoughts on training and skills development? Dean has made his clear. And Alan makes a good point that he can do all the training courses in the world, but do production companies really look at that? Because they really let you train on the job. But it's true, you know, we have that question quite a lot here. You know, if I do this course and that course and that course, will it improve my chances of getting the job? And I kind of am loath to say it, but I really don't think it does at this point, unless it's specific to something technical, perhaps like a shooting course. I don't know. Adeel, what do you think about that?
It's really, the timing of this is uncanny, because we do have our third Coalition for Change meeting tomorrow afternoon, where the entire topic is training. And Donna Tabra and Julie Cohen from Screen Skills have been putting together, you know, we've had a few subcommittee meetings that Abby, Kaz, and a few others have been part of, others who offer training. And they've come up with a suite of measures that, again, we're hoping to enshrine in the charter that's being made. And there's some really interesting ideas in there. Obviously, you know, we have to put it to the group. You know, I can't really share them just yet because people need to discuss them. But, you know, things like training passports, or adding, you know, certain qualifications in job specs as well, and even like management leadership courses and things like that. You know, stuff around race and disability, but led by people, you know, with that knowledge, and using the right training providers. It's all up for discussion. We are going to have, you know, we've got a 2-hour meeting tomorrow, and I'm hoping that something good comes from it. But it's, you know, so far people seem to be making the right noises, but it's just whether this industry can follow up on it and make training a really integral part of what we do.
Sarah Phillips mentions the Time Project, which is something I think that we should name check. That Dean, she saw that via Bectu and James. She's asking if it's something worth getting behind. I mean, we know the guys who run it, right? Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, so from what I understand, so the guys that share my telly job have been working on that for the last few months. I think it has the potential to be a fantastic tool, you know, especially as the industry is getting back on its feet. And what the idea is that you, on an app, I think via watch or maybe your phone as well, you can basically sort of record the actual hours that you're working. So, I mean, those guys have been working really hard on that. And I think that it's going to be a really important thing going forward. And I definitely encourage as many people as possible to sign up to it. And I think you can do that on their website. The link's been going around a lot of the freelancer groups. So look out for that. Yes,
I think if you look up the ladies that share my telly job and then the Time Project, and you can find out more about it there. Alexandra Jeffries says she works harder at home than at the office and love having the work autonomy and being treated like an adult. As a team, we managed to get 15 episodes to Channel 5, 9 o'clock every Monday for 4 months during lockdown. Fair play. She's lucky that her CEO recognises the need for flexibility, but many of her friends will be back in the office full time. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It can work in different ways. I don't know. How do we all feel about going back to the office?
I think it would be, I think we all know and have awareness of the things that we've missed from the office, which is, you know, small talk and those conversations with people and the, you know, the socializing and stuff like that, and also work things as well, like the work things which drops by not being near each other. I think it would be a real shame if at the end of this pandemic, which hopefully will end soon, touch wood, everything just reverted back to how it was before, because we've been given a real opportunity here to solve a lot of issues, and we've had to do it at speed because we've been forced to. And to just go back without having any reflection on what should stay or what working practices have worked well and really helps people out, I think would just be a massive waste and a huge loss.
I think it's also kind of been more cost efficient in some ways. So some of these things should be adapted just on a business line of the flexibility actually helps money-wise for more than one person.
I think for me, I would just say that I think what Dean says about things taking time is so key. And I know that a lot of people are really desperate to sort of see change overnight and stuff, but I think that's, you know, rushing into anything now and any quick decisions or any charts or anything is the biggest mistake we could make, because I think we need to take the time to listen to everyone, because not, you know, I think that another mistake is saying that all approaches are going to work for all freelancers. That's not true. I think we need to take the time to build something that recognizes the individuals and individual needs and be able to cater to those. So that's what, yeah, I agree in taking time on a lot of things. I don't think these changes are going to, you know, happen overnight. And I hope that people can be a little bit patient while we're having those discussions.
Yes, so much has changed in our worlds over the last year that you're right. I think to jump into any big decisions feels wrong. It's almost like we're easing ourselves out of this odd, you know, challenging, awful on some levels year and back into what might be normal, but we want to keep the stuff that was not normal. It's a very strange situation to be in, isn't it?
I mean, do you remember, I remember before the pandemic, the idea of, you know, working from home for one day was just like, it would blow people's minds. They thought you were just going to go home and sleep all day and wouldn't do jack shit, excuse my language. And now everyone's doing it and people are working harder at home than they were before. So I sort of think, you know, I agree, you know, I think we need to really consider the benefits actually for, you know, the industry, but also for the freelancers, and really consider the limitations. But I don't think we should just revert back to normal, because I think there are things which, you know, we've gained and which we've learned in this period, which, you know, we should hold on to for good reason.
I also think having a functioning office is obviously really important, because there are lots of people who don't have working space at home. But the flexibility is, I think, useful for everybody.
Mm-hmm. I think there's also been an incredible amount of groups of people coming together, and support networks. Again, let's reference those, the Film and TV Charity and their support line. Adeel has all of the resources on the TV Mindset, but lots of groups of people have found each other in this time. I mean, Caroline, do you want to talk about some of those as well from your groups?
Well, the main one to say is looking at Creative Diversity Network. Please fill in the Diamond data forms. The group really needs to look, and also neurodiverse creative media for neurodiverse, because before we didn't have people who had neurodiverse coming onto this group, and I think that's really worth joining us as well. So please do. So we're looking for all disabled professionals to join.
Yeah. I feel like we need to wrap up. We've got 2 minutes until the end. We've not done too badly in terms of running over. I feel like I want to ask a massive question, but then that will give us another 20 minutes added onto the end of this. Like, there's clearly still a lot left to do, but lots of progress that's made, or traction that is still ongoing. I think I've taken Abby's words quite strongly away with me, that it's the reset the industry needs has not happened yet. There have been big explosions of conversation and emotion, and certainly a drive from all of you guys and lots of others to do better, but it is by no means over. I don't know if it ever will be. As we said, we can't problem solve like we could on a TV program. This is never going to end as such, but I want to say a personal thank you to all of you for all of your incredibly hard work and just energy. And as we have heard today, it takes a lot to campaign day after day. Adeel has laid it out there that it's been a very, very difficult year for him, and that for all of you, it is absolutely exhausting, and there's a lot that we don't see that they deal with for free, over and above their day job on a daily, hourly basis. So I just want to say thank you so much, you guys, for everything that you have been doing and will be continuing to do.
Can I also just end on a really positive note as well, and say, for all the weird and difficult messages that we've had and whatnot, there are so many that I get that are so positive, and people saying, do you know what, because you guys spoke out, I was able to get this at work, I was able to fight for my rights and I won. And I've never seen that before, and people are feeling empowered. So if there's one thing that I'd look back at this year and think, do you know what am I most proud of, it would be that sense that actually we're all coming together. Even the Twitter incident as well, to have 1,200 freelancers mobilise within the space of like a day or two.
It was a weekend, wasn't it? Just a weekend.
At the time, but to everyone who signed that letter, thank you so much. But for me, it was more the take home is that we are so much stronger together. We have come together in the last year, and I know that even in small ways and those little battles that we're fighting, we are making a difference. And it's all down to you guys watching and people out there. This isn't just going to come from the 5 of us in this room. It's going to come from all of us. But I'm really, really confident that's happening, and I think we're just going to try and keep that up as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's just adding on to that is everyone feels emboldened to be able to speak out within their companies, and I think companies are listening as well at the moment. So it feels like a positive change is coming.
We have sensed that they are listening. So yes, please take away the positivity from this as well, everyone. And all of you guys on the panel, you should take a look at the comments. There's some lovely stuff coming in to say thank you to you all for representing them and for your hard work. It really is appreciated. So gosh, that was kind of a year in summary, sort of, with loads more to talk about for next time, or when we're actually in the pub again. Perhaps we couldn't even do a rule of 6 here, could we? No, not even.
But before we do go, honestly, big shout out to Kimberly as well. I'm going to go absolutely leery, just go like woo, woo, woo. Session and everything that you've been doing for freelancers as well, because you've given us a platform, you've given a lot of other people a platform. I know you've taken a lot of time to really put marginalized people on the platform. I know you did a session about disability, about race. A lot of friends of mine have done these panels, and I haven't done anything for a while, but I wanted to do this one because we think you're amazing. We wouldn't be here otherwise. And I think you should be acknowledged for the hard work that you've done over the last year as well.
That is very much appreciated. Thank you. Mutual love and respect. But thank you ever so much, everyone, for watching. Really appreciate it. If you missed some of it, you'll be able to see all this, the whole session on our website later on today, and all of our previous ones. Send us your CV if you haven't, please. There's a link on our jobs board on talentedpeople.tv where you can tell us all about you, and we try and speak to as many people as we can and match you up with the best jobs possible. But thank you ever so much for everyone watching, and you guys for your time, and we will see you for another TP session or jobs call interview perhaps, and very soon. So yes, thank you guys. See you later.
Bye. 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 Bye.